Perak Yud Dalid, Pasuk Yud Lamed Gimel. V'daber Hashem el Moshe v'Aaron Lemor. Ki savo l'Eretz Canaan. When you come into the land of Canaan, Asher ani nosein lochem lachuza. Usham, I am giving to you as a portion. V'nosati nega tzoras beveis eretz uchazaschem. I will put, or I will cause, this blight of leprosy in the house of the land of Achuzaschem, the land of your inheritance. So Rashi cites an interesting Torah Kohanim. He's informing them, I will put a tzaras, nega tzaras, in the house of the land of your inheritance, besurahi lahem. He's informing them that the reason why the leprosy is affecting the houses, which ultimately will cause the house to be demolished, is because the Amorites, they had hidden treasures, they hidden gold in the walls of their homes. The 40-year period when the Jews were in the desert, and through the discoloration, which is leprosy, notates abayis, he destroys the house, and he finds the treasure which was hidden. And therefore God is saying, I'm putting the nega there, since it's bsura. I'm informing you in advance, the reason why it's coming is so you should find the treasure that's buried in the wall of the house. So over here, the Shecham says something interesting. That's very good. The leprosy which comes on the houses. So you should find the treasures. But the discolorations which you have on the clothing, why did they come upon the clothing? Okay. I mean, Alan, you're going to ask your question in a moment. Because they weren't sure which clothing were used for idolatrous worship. And the reason why you had this leprosy, this leprous discoloration, was that you should burn them, you should destroy them, that you shouldn't be associated with idolatry. Motzosi. Okay, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, the question which you'd ask is like what we asked. I mean, the Chazal tell us that ultimate leprosy comes because of Lashon Hara and because withholding. However, the reason why the house is destroyed is to teach the person a lesson. That he believes that he created all this and it's only due to minimally his participation, and he created his wealth. Hashem is teaching him, no, that you only have to take the initiative, but the reason why you succeeded was because it was given to you. It was endowed to you. Except to merit the endowment, you have to take initiative for you to be able to come upon that endowment. And what's the proof? The proof is when the house will be destroyed, you'll be compensated immediately. That's the lesson which the person learns. But ultimately, the reason why it's happening is because the person is failing as a Jew. I mean, the way the Sifcham is citing the question, that's very good regarding the house. But what about the garment? But according to Chazal, which Alan mentioned a few days ago, the lesson starts away from the person and it gets closer. It starts with the house to the clothing, and eventually it affects his body. If he doesn't learn the lesson, if he doesn't take the takeaway. So if that's the case, the question is not on the garment, right? The house, you're being compensated. The garment is, again, it's to show you, because he's speaking out of turn, it's getting closer to home. The garment's burned, but not, what's there to learn from the garment? There's plenty to learn from the garment. That because of your spiritual failing, this negative energy which you created ultimately can come to haunt you personally and will compromise you physically. So the question doesn't even start with the garment. He's asking, if God put the leprous lesion on the house, what about the garment? So he has to come up with this reason, is because maybe the garment the person has was idolatrous garments, and therefore, as a result of that, you're not permitted to benefit from it. So that's where the discoloration develops. So ultimately, you're going to burn it. Like one is obligated to burn something which was involved in idolatry. But the way we understand it has nothing to do with this. The question doesn't start. The reason why all this is happening is because of spiritual failing. Except God informs you that regarding the house, which is the essence of the security of a person, that he has a roof over his head, that is to teach you this lesson. But why did it happen? Again, it's because of spiritual failing. It's not just God is giving you a gift here. You're being compensated because you actually had misstepped. And it's to teach you the lesson. What about if you don't find the leper? What about if you're not compensated? What every house that was destroyed, they always found treasures in the walls? Wasn't. Rabbeinu Yonah writes that when something happens to a person negatively, there are many takeaways. Sometimes it's only an alert, and sometimes the alert is a stronger alert, and sometimes it's punishment. Ultimately, if the person himself doesn't understand it and doesn't make the correction, it becomes punishment. Now, everybody has their own challenges, their own tests. And we have many questions. Certain people, when God tests them and they fail, or wherever they go, Hashem gives them an opportunity sometime to see it in a context which, in retrospect, the person now understands where he made his mistake and he's able to make the return, what we call tshuva. Sometimes a person just keeps going down that pike and he doesn't see the end of the road. And that person eventually goes from bad to worse. Who needs to be compensated with finding the treasure in the house? Let's say a person who's a Talmud Chacham, and he gets it, and he understands it, and he missteps, because we're all human. Because of envy, withholding this, he doesn't want to give a person. Lend him that vessel. Hashem says, I'm going to teach you a lesson. When he learns the lesson, he learns it well. Because he understands, he puts it immediately in perspective. Why did it happen? Because an ordinary person, if he doesn't find that treasure in the wall, this complicates his life into a greater degree. His house was destroyed. That person will he have the takeaway. It's not so simple he's going to have the takeaway. So he has to find the treasure in the wall to learn the lesson that it's not you who create your success, but God gives you your success. That's the difference. Understand what I'm saying? It doesn't mean to say every house that you demolish, you're going to find the treasure in the wall. The one who will find the treasure in the wall, it needs that treasure to be the eye-opener, because without that, he doesn't have the eye-opener. Another person, as the Gemara tells us, Ein odom nokef etzbo lamato, elam kain machrizum l'malu. You don't stub your finger or your toe on the threshold level unless at that moment it was pronounced from above, you should stub your toe. There are no coincidences. Nothing in life is happenstance. It's for a purpose. But who has that level of clarity that he understands that the moment it happens, it's because it was pronounced. You have to be a person of standing or capacity to be able to have that takeaway. An ordinary person doesn't have that takeaway. So he has to have a greater level of clarification for him to have that eye-opener. So I'm saying, if you have a person, let's say a Talmud Chacham, or a person who has the capacity to read the script right, even if he doesn't find the treasure in the house, he's learned his lesson. Another person, unless he finds the treasure, he doesn't learn that lesson. Therefore, God is the one who gives that person the treasure. You find there's a mitzvah say that every day there's a mitzvah to remember what Hashem had did to Miriam when we left Egypt, because she had spoken out of turn about Moshe Rabbeinu. She became a leper, and she was a leper for 7 days. She was out of the camp, and only when she recovered were they able to. Could she come back into the camp? Could they continue traveling? Miriam. So. And this is the first time she ever spoke out of turn. She never spoke out of turn before. But because she spoke about Moshe Avdi, it was considered so serious, the first failing, she was struck with leprosy. It's not she spoke excessively. Other people, person is a gossiper, and he's gone beyond the pale. In this area, he's failed so seriously, Hashem has to rattle his cage. Miriam, she failed once. This is the first time she's ever failed. But who did she speak against? She spoke about her brother. And even as the Ramban writes, what was her intention to totally to deprecate him and to minimize him? The answer is no. It was with a question, but because the question was an inappropriate question, because if she would have really fully grasped what Moshe Rabbeinu was, she wouldn't have even asked the question. So the question was inappropriate. So for who she was, she became a leper. So leprosy is not only for the person who's the one who's gone beyond the limit. It's a person who needs that fine-tuning. He becomes the leper. The Gemara tells us that David HaMelech became a leper for other things, whatever the reasons were. Because the Medrash says for 10 reasons a person could become a leper. It's mainly for gossip and for envy and these things. We'd ask the question, one second, we asked the question that what's the reason why it says that when Miriam became a leper, the Shekhinah waited, the clouds of glory waited, and the 600,000 men above the age of 20 who left Egypt, they all waited until she recovered from the leprosy out of respect for Miriam. Why? Mida connected Mida. Just as when Moshe was put into the Nile, in the basket, it says, "V'teisatza v'chosa mirochok, liros mayeosu." His sister stood from a distance to see what the outcome would be. And that's when she saw Basparo taking the basket. So just as she waited, Klaus waited for her. That was the Mida Kenegim, that was the reward. As she waited to see what was going to happen with Moshe Rabbeinu, would he drown, would he not drown? Because the whole discussion was whether a prophecy was going to be true or not. Because she originally had prophesied that Moshe is the future redeemer of the Jewish people. So she was waiting to see, to make sure everything was okay. And it says at the moment, Pasparo took her, she immediately came out, and she found her a nursemaid, which was Yocheved, the mother of Moshe Rabbeinu. So the question we asked was, what kind of Mida connected Mida is this? I mean, here, this is the ultimate, and here, she's suffering the ultimate disgrace. It's bad enough she became a leper. But Hashem says, not only am I going to wait for you, not only the clouds of glory are going to wait for you, every Jew is going to be aware that you spoke Lashon Hara and that you're a leper, and we have to wait for your recovery. Remember? That's the question we asked. So what we had said was, that is a mitzvah saseh. Because of what she did, remembering what Miriam had done when we left Egypt, how she became a leper, that's a positive commandment. That means she is the model to what degree a Jew has to be careful with his power of speech. That if he has that misuse of speech, he can become a leper. Miriam being who she was, if she is the model in this, although she failed, and although there was a degree of embarrassment, because it was a reprimand from Hashem, but factually, if every Jew who withholds from speaking Lashon Hara, the takeaways from Miriam, she's accredited to every person who refrains from speaking Lashon Hara. That's Miriam's reward. We waited because it's important every Jew should know the severity of speaking out of turn. And every time we say that pasuk, every Jew fulfills a mitzvah saseh. And so we're filling that mitzvah aseh, the positive command, because of what Miriam had done. So all the mitzvahs aseh regarding speech over the millennia, everything accrues to Miriam. This is the ultimate level of reward. So there may have been a level of embarrassment, but she understood the value of that was that she should be fully reinstated and rewarded till the end of time, that everybody should learn from her failing. Good, Alan.
Two things.